Hi everyone, it's Russell White here. I'm the CEO of the Australian Road Safety Foundation, and I'd like to welcome you to a very special presentation for Rural Road Safety Month. Now, you might be asking yourself, why do we need to focus on rural road safety? Well, it might shock you to know that even though only 1/3 of Australia's population live in regional and remote areas, those areas account for 2/3 of the nation's road toll. So today, we're going to be hearing from key stakeholders right across the board to look at how we can improve our road safety resilience and ultimately reduce the road toll. And as part of the launch, we were joined by the Minister for Police, Emergency Services and Correctional Services here in South Australia, the Honourable Joe Sockarch. Joe, thank you so much for being with us and greatly value your time. From your perspective, what do you think is some of the reasons why we're seeing increases in the road toll as we're seeing now?
Yeah, look, thank you for having me. It's great to be here today for this really zeroing in focus on rural road safety. I don't think I have a reason, if I'm honest, about why there is an increase in road deaths in our regions this year. It's been a shocking year, and it's been a pretty tough year right across the country. And I hope that it shocks people into action. But I think the reality is that as long as we have road deaths and road fatalities, and importantly, road trauma, that we as a government and successive governments and future governments will take all action that we can. But this is a really important month because, albeit that every day should be a focus on road safety, this month there's a really particular focus for people to step into gear, take the action that they can, because the buck stops with us.
What do you think are some of those contributing factors in those regional areas? I mean, road safety is an issue everywhere, but as we're obviously focusing on Rural Road Safety Month, what are some of those things that you see as a contributing factor to that?
Look, evidence would suggest, and research would suggest that there are a suite of factors. There are, I think, I'd characterise them as low-hanging fruit, things like not wearing a seatbelt. It is more prevalent in our regional communities to not whack your seatbelt on when driving, and if I can be really honest and frank about it, it's inexplicable that someone would be jumping on the roads these days without wearing their seatbelt. There is no surprise whatsoever about the trauma that can occur. There's also complacency, and that isn't to say that people that drive in our regions are less responsible or, in fact, not as professionally equipped to do what they're doing. But complacency on those longer drives is a factor, and we also know that if the consequences of something going wrong when you're driving at high speed is, of course, more profound. That if you're driving in the city or in the township itself and you're driving at 30, 40, 50 k's an hour compared to driving on an open road in our regions on a highway at 80 to 100 k's an hour, the consequences are much, much different. And that's why when you are taking those regional trips, the responsibility is to drive to condition. Drive to condition, also acknowledging and knowing that you've got a much smaller window of opportunity should something go wrong.
Do you think that cultural thing also needs to sort of look, as you said, look more at driving to suit the conditions? Sometimes people go, oh, but I was under the speed limit, but it might have been hammering down with rain or the conditions have changed so much. It's such a bigger picture that, and I think, as you said, it's probably more about that personal responsibility as well, would you say?
Well, it's a speed limit, not a speed minimum. And whether you're on a regional road or a city road, driving conditions is just so important. And getting where you need to go or want to go, 10 or 15 or 30 seconds or a minute quicker because you're driving too fast or you're driving aggressively or impatiently, it's just not worth it. It is just not worth it. And it's not worth it for you, and it's certainly not worth it for those innocent drivers on our roads who are far too often caught up in the consequences of bad decision-making by other drivers.
And we're seeing this real cultural shift at the moment. I mean, why do you think, is it something that's would probably become more prevalent post-COVID? Is there something, has the attitudes changed? I mean, you mentioned before about seatbelts, and you're right, it's the number one thing. It's the thing you should just be doing as a reflex. And yet we're seeing more people, or seeing a lot of people, choosing not to do that.
It's a really tough one. It's a really tough one. I can never remember a point in my life where there was anything other than an acknowledgement that the seatbelt was it.
Yeah.
You know, when we got in the car as kids, there was no question you wouldn't be moving. And certainly with my kids now, I'll sit there for 5 minutes if they're mucking around, but the seatbelt goes on before we even creep down the road. It's one factor. And we know that the fatal five are the overwhelming contributors to road trauma. It's not just a seatbelt, but it's drinking, drunk driving, it's impatient driving, it's distracted driving, it's speeding. These are things which each and every one of us has at the tip of our fingers to control.
Yeah.
Take that extra 10 seconds to get where you're going, put your mobile phone down. Certainly, if you're driving on a road which is 80 or 100 k's an hour, the thought of using your mobile phone and being distracted is inexplicable and it's selfish.
What would be your final message to everyone in South Australia for this Rural Road Safety Month? What would be your main message to them?
I'd make a plea that everyone starts the conversation around road safety as early as you can. Have that conversation in your homes. Have it with your children as you're driving them to school in the mornings. Certainly my kids have it with me as I'm driving them to school. Every single opportunity you get to have a conversation about road safety, about behaviours that impact road safety is an opportunity to save a life, to change a life. And we live in a community that looks after each other, or at least I hope we live in a community where we all prioritise looking after each other. And that has to start with the conversation at home, amongst your friends and family and your loved ones.
And I guess like everything in life, we want to have respect, we want to have courtesy, we want to bring back some of that humanity to I guess what is something that in a lot of people's eyes they tend to see as almost being in their own isolation or work in isolation. So is community also part of that?
Look, it is. Community is everything, in my view. And, as we sit here and we talk about Rural Road Safety Month, often we're talking about the negatives. But it is an opportunity to also remind ourselves that the 99.9% of road users do the right thing.
Yeah.
And they're driving with compassion, they're driving with humanity, and they're driving looking out for each other. So let's work on that. Let's build on that momentum of people wanting to do the right thing and translate it to those conversations that can change a life in every opportunity that we get before us.
So that's a great way to sum it up, I think. That's beautifully said. So I want to thank you so much for your time today and congratulations on all the work that you're not only doing at a government level, but also the portfolios and those emergency services that are under your guidance. So thanks for being part of Rural Road Safety Month, and can appreciate the support.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks for
Cheers.
Well, again, we're here for the launch of Rural Road Safety Month for this year, and I'm joined by two of our great partners from AAMI, Curtis Mackay, Todd Feeney. Thank you so much for being with us. Todd, I might start with you first. The education piece and the campaigning piece is so much a part of what we do from the foundation. I guess that also dovetails into the more corporate role or the corporate overview or the vision that AAMI would have as well, is to try and change community and change the narrative.
Yeah, well, we're very ambitious around the reduction of road trauma all round, and we also understand that there's so much we can invest in and so many partners that we can work with, but ultimately, whether it be lobbying government or whether it be getting the message out to communities, whether we talk to vehicle manufacturers around safety and advancements in accident avoidance systems, the fact is it comes down to the driver and the road user at the end of the day. And unless we get the message into those people that are about to get behind the wheel and take the time to think about the impacts that can be caused and the catastrophes that can come from that.
And I guess from a claims perspective, you guys would have first-hand knowledge of the sort of trends that are happening. Are there sort of demographics that you're seeing? Is there anything you're learning from those claims history of what we're actually seeing out there, or any changes?
Look, I think, Russell, the really concerning trend is that the road trauma numbers are increasing. And we just need to make sure that we don't become immune to that. We don't accept that as a norm, and that we continue to make sure that we're driving the message home. There is no specific demographic. There is no particular regional location. There is no vehicle type or even driver age. What's happening is it's happening across the board. And as Curtis pointed out, it's affecting not just families, friends, but also those communities as well.
Yeah, and Curtis, I guess also to that point too, when we're seeing these really alarming increases, it's not just in a localised area; it's a national thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, alarming is a good word. The numbers are going up and don't seem to be improving. I think it's really important for people to have a look at those numbers and what do they actually represent. It's a real social tragedy, road trauma. Just have a think about maybe the families that might not have somebody coming to Christmas this year. So yeah, really, really important message.
And is it about changing the narrative around outcome or consequence? I think sometimes we get so focused on people just thinking they're going to get a fine, but at the end of the day, the implication of that choice could be far greater than that, couldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's about preparation, I think. Have a really good think about what you're doing before you get in the car, particularly if you're taking a longer journey, which we might see on rural roads. It's got nothing to do with demerit points or speeding or being fined. It's about, I guess, taking a role on the road as a driver or a cyclist, whatever it might be, really seriously, because there are some really serious consequences as a result.
And from your standpoint, in a rural environment, what are some of the things that you might see either as claim history, or what's some of the anecdotal stuff that you're seeing in a rural environment?
Yeah, look, you do see, sadly, people having accidents close to home in rural environments, and that's, I guess, maybe a bit of complacency coming into it. They've driven those roads a number of times. Inattention and speeding, we do see that. And the big one is also, passengers in vehicles, like they've got a role to play as well, to support the driver, not distract them and those type of things. So there's some of the things we see crop up in our claims.
Yeah, excellent. Todd, I guess final messages for you for anybody as far as this Rural Road Safety Month. What would be your key message to the whole of Australia?
Let's not be complacent. Let's make sure that road safety is front of mind when we're getting behind the wheel. Let's not just accept the trauma that's profoundly impacting those communities that Curtis mentioned as an acceptable norm. Let's really understand the impact and really have a high ambition for zero fatalities and road trauma.
Yeah. And I guess understand the personal power that we all have for that as well, isn't it? Curtis, final message for you for Rural Road Safety Month.
Really important that we incorporate everything we've discussed today. And probably a key message for me is around resilience, and for our drivers and motorists, it's really important that they develop that. And the way they do that is being prepared. Don't take your journey for granted. Think about the consequences and make sure you arrive safely.
Well, gents, I want to thank you so much for your time today. And again, the work that we do from the Australian Road Safety Foundation simply wouldn't be possible without the support of our corporate partners. And obviously, Amy and the Suncorp Group are critical to that. So thank you for being with us today. Thanks for being part of Rural Road Safety Month, and thanks for all your support.
Thanks, Russell.
Dan, I think firstly, from your standpoint, what sort of things do you think are causing incidents or an increase in incidents, not only in road safety generally, but also in a regional sense?
Well, look, I'm quite clear on this. I think this is an issue with complacency a lot of the time. That's my big thing. I try to think of things which are influenceable, and obviously we've worked very hard over the years to get safer cars and safer roads and increase awareness to some degree. But I still think that as human beings, we get complacent, and very quickly we become used to driving. We jump into a vehicle and off we go. And very little time is spent planning, thinking. And then once you're in the car, you're thinking, right, I've got 20 minutes now till I get to my destination. I'm bored already. So if I'm not listening to the radio, I might have a sneaky look at my phone and see if I'm getting any emails. Or I might even do something legal like phone somebody and with a hands-free device. But even then, I'm now distracted. I'm talking to a friend or something, maybe having a discussion, maybe having a heated argument. I'm not paying attention to the road. So what we've turned driving into is more of a sort of get in a box and get from A to B, instead of what it was originally intended to be, which is a complex system of getting in a vehicle and making sure the vehicle is safe, knowing where we're going, planning it all out, making sure we're not tired, making sure we haven't had drink or alcohol or prescription drugs or otherwise, making sure that we're safe to start and continue that journey. And I think that's where we've become very complacent. And I feel quite fortunate that I have a good insight into a lot of the aviation industry with our working very closely with pilots in the helicopters and fixed wing environments of MedStar, the retrieval service. And one of the reasons why aviation has stayed so safe is because they've not become complacent. There's no such thing as when the alert goes off at the base, the pilots don't sort of jump out their car and jump into the aircraft and say, let's go. There's a complicated system of arrangements whereby daily checks, complex checks, they've got fatigue management systems and structures all set up to allow them for the whole day to be prepared for their 8 or 12 hours that they're going to be flying. So they're completely ready, they're mentally ready, they're physically ready. And even then, when you jump in the aircraft to go immediately, there's still 2 minutes or so of checks, of complicated challenge and respond checks that allow for that journey to occur safely. And that used to be the same when people went driving in their car. It was a big deal. I'm getting in the car, I'm going to go driving, I need to get ready for this. Now, as I said, you just hop in and you drive off and you hope for the best. You hope that the car's safe for you, you hope that the road's safe for you. You're pretty much absolving yourself of all responsibility. And I'd like people to think when they get in their car, no, or when they get on their bike, or when they even cross the road, it's no, I need to get ready for this. I'm taking my life into my hands here, and I need to do something about it and do some checks and balances.
Nicole, from your standpoint, and again, I'll just maybe touch on a point that Dan raised before, the education piece is critical, not only for the people on the road, but we're also seeing education training, even in the space we're in right now, this amazing ward where people are simulating the sort of things they're going to have to deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as health professionals, we're constantly learning and we're constantly trying to ensure that we improve our systems and processes and communication pathways to get the best outcome for our patients. So that we do that as health professionals, and it's really important that we do that for every aspect in our life, including driving and road safety. And so we're really committed as a health service to ensuring we communicate and educate our community about road safety, and hence why we're working so closely with the Australian Road Safety Foundation, but also in our injury prevention programs that we're delivering to high school students across the state with our Prevent Alcohol and Risk-Related Trauma program. And we're going out and really ensuring that young people understand the risks on our roads, as well as other risks that they're going to encounter as they grow up and evolve into an adult, and making sure that they know how to keep themselves and others safe in their community. And so that education piece is really important, not only for adults, but our young people growing up, so that when they're out on our roads and then they're teaching their children, it's obviously a roll-on effect and generational from that point of view.
Nicole, there's outstanding work that's done in the medical field. What sort of issues do you think the first responders, the people that are in these rooms, preparing for a road trauma incident, how has the mental game changed for them, or how do they prepare, or what's some of the longer term things you see with your teams that you work with?
Yeah, of course. I think, as health professionals, we train how to fix people. We train on the clinical care, the medications, the procedures we need to do. But it's really important that we focus on how to cope with that stress and how to process that stress that you're encountering through your job. I think as health professionals, when we're on and we're doing the job, we're focused on the task at hand. But quite often it's afterwards that when you deal with the families and you have to meet with the family and explain what's happened and support them through going to see their loved one, whether they're severely injured or sadly those times where they don't make it and we have to deliver that horrible news. That has lasting effect on our health professionals. And that's in the hospital setting. Like, how about those people that in our regional communities are the CFS officers, the Country Fire Service, the SES, and our volunteer ambulance service officers. And so when they go out to the scene as the first responders, it's often people from their own community they're helping, someone they recognise, someone's child, someone's brother. And quite often those people are people that are also working in jobs in their community. So the local butcher is the CFS officer as well, and they leave their job to go and respond to a road crash not knowing if it's someone they know. So that has long-lasting impacts on them, not only on the first responders, but the entire community. And so it's important not only to support our pre-hospital providers and our emergency services, including our police, but also our healthcare teams who then continue to support the families through that psychosocial impacts of their injury as they move on through their recovery, or sadly when people don't survive.
And you're right, in those regional areas, those communities are so close, like everybody knows everybody. So the chances of knowing that person for that ambulance officer or police, whoever's going to that situation, first of all, high chance that they're going to know that person.
100%. And I think in South Australia, it's a small city. And so it's not often that something happens to someone that you don't know someone that knows someone that knows someone that is related to it. But in a regional community, it's so much smaller, and it is the person that you went to school with, or your high school teacher, or someone that is in your community. And the impact of that is widespread. Every life that's impacted on our road impacts on hundreds more people, and every life that's lost is thousands. And so it's really important that we all take the responsibility on the roads to keep ourselves and everyone else safe, and so then we don't have to have those impacts.
Final message from you for Rural Road Safety Month would be?
Oh, absolutely. Drive to the conditions, pay attention and take breaks, and just be mindful that we're not invincible. It can happen to any of us, and we see it day in and day out. And you all have the responsibility to be really careful on our roads that you get to your destination, and so does everyone else.
Absolutely. Dan, closing words for you?
Yeah, look, I think the same. The responsibility, take responsibility, and the messages are there on our backdrop. I promise to choose road safety, and I think that's a duty for all of us that drive, because, as we've always said, Nicole and I would like nothing more than to be out of a job, but that's not going to happen unless everybody commits to that promise.
Yeah, 100%. Guys, thank you so much, not only for being with us today, but for all the work that you do and all the support that you've given the foundation and our efforts to try and improve road trauma. So thank you so much for your time and for helping us out today.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Well, again, we're here at Royal Adelaide Hospital for the launch of Rural Road Safety Month, and we're joined by two people that have seen road safety at close proximity and understand the real human impact that happens with road trauma. I'm joined by Dr. Annie Fraser and also Jack Anair, who's got a personal story that he's going to share with us. And I want to start with you first, though. As a doctor, you've seen road trauma from every sort of angle, but maybe tell me how it's affected you at a personal level.
I personally had a motor vehicle accident when I was working rurally, and that's affected me in a couple of ways. That was mainly due to fatigue, so it's sort of shown me the importance of that in contributing to motor vehicle accidents. I totaled my new car at the time. It gave me an appreciation of my Subaru in that it protected me. I also suffered a concussion at the time, and it was quite anxious post the event. And because it was around the time of COVID, I had to rely on rental cars for an entire year before I could get my new vehicle. Getting back on the road was a little bit difficult because I felt so anxious post that event. As I said, very appreciative of my car doing all the right things, the airbags deployed, the whole front crumpled, and I was safe.
Yeah.
But it did strike home the effects of fatigue and someone who I thought I was okay to drive and I wasn't. And I think that is a big issue in rural areas, and you often feel like you don't have a choice because of the distances and because of other factors.
Jack, in your case, maybe just tell us a little bit about what happened to you personally, and just tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so Friday the 16th of November 2007 started off as a normal day. I'd finished high school the year before and was basically in the gap year before going off to uni in 2008, or that was the plan. And I'd worked my admin job during the day, went to work my other job as a night field kid during the night, and a carload of mates came through and basically knocked things out of place, annoyed me as they normally did when they came through. But then finally they said, "Do you want to come do manues with us later?" And I said, "Hell yeah, that sounds good." So finished work and joined them on doing mainies up and down the main street and of Mount Gambier, funnily enough. Commercial street for anyone who's playing at home and knows Mount Gambier. But then we found ourselves at McDonald's, the 24-hour McDonald's, and one of the guys in the car got a call from a guy out of town seeking a lift at a party. And so our driver said, yep, no dramas. And out we went to pick him up. And as we were coming back into Mount Gambier on what was otherwise a normal night for the evening, disaster struck. And we got T-boned somewhere between 100 and 110 kilometres per hour by a guy who was being an equal legend of a bloke as the driver of our car was. Both drivers were Desos, no drugs, no alcohol, no excessive speed, just the world's worst timing. And on impact, three of the boys, basically as a result of the impact, three boys would pass away that evening, leaving two, including myself, who were injured. I was widely written off as the fourth fatality, given my list of injuries, which from the top down were I had a bleed on the brain, a break in my neck up in the region where basically you got a 5% chance of survival. I ruptured my inferior vena cava, which is the main blood vessel back to the heart, collapsed my right lung, damaged my right kidney, ruptured my liver, which required basically a scar right down the middle to pretty much go in and barbecue that. Also completely severed my urethra off my bladder, which involved basically cutting a hole in my abdomen and having a catheter through that and a suprapubic catheter, which is awful for the next 6 months till they could fix up my urethra. I also had a fracture of my pelvis, fracture of my femur, and an open fracture of tib and fib on my right leg. Now, because it happened in Mount Gambier, pretty much a third, I would suggest, of all of the people who attended the scene knew someone in that crash. If not in the first circle, then they knew their brother. So one of them actually tells me later on that he was one of the guys who helped pull me out of the car. They could only get so much out before, or could cut so much out around me before they started risking injuring me. And because of that open fracture of both, and basically on my right foot, he's watched me, and I was conscious at the scene apparently, which I don't remember anything thanks to trauma-induced amnesia. He's watched my foot do a 180-degree turn in either direction as they pulled me out of the car. And it was only once I got into the ambulance that I actually fell into a coma. Again, people at the scene said that I was just screaming out in agony for my mum, as I imagine anyone would in the situation that I found myself within. I was in that coma for 3 weeks and had dreams that was so disturbing that basically it gave me post-traumatic stress. But it was, I guess it was even harder when I came out and discovered, that 3 of my friends had passed away. And, it was the start of a multi-month, if not multi-year recovery to get back on my feet and back to as normal as I could be. I have had to adjust to my new normal.
It's still just incredible with everything you just listed there about the injuries, and again, not just the physical stuff, but the mental stuff. I mean, that's again probably the untold story of road trauma. People, I guess, think of a fatality, and then that's one aspect, as tragic as that is. But for anyone that survives, it's a life sentence of a different kind, isn't it?
Yeah, especially I think the 3 biggest ones I had to deal with were post-traumatic stress from those nightmares I had, the coma dreams, the general depression at having these massive holes in my lives where those 3 boys were, and coming to grips with that. And the last one was the survivor syndrome, or why me? Like, what did I do to survive? I considered pretty much every one of the boys that died, for lack of a better term, better than me. Comparison is the thief of joy, but you can't help but do that. And, it just was a rabbit hole of like, why me? What have I done that's more important than, these other boys have done? Why did I survive? And all of the, there's so many variables in that situation, but you just can't help but start going down that path. And it was difficult, but I am fortunate in that my family very early on encouraged early psychological intervention, and that sort of set me up in a bit of a good place. as well as, generally being more of a grateful guy anyway. I suppose the framework for me was probably better than some of the ones you might hear about, Afterwards, I probably was in a better place than a lot of some of the other road trauma victims you hear of. And I'm incredibly grateful for that.
And I know, just continuing on with that point, you're very much an advocate now for expanding that education, that awareness. You're working obviously really closely with the party program and all the excellent work that they're doing as well. I guess just wrapping up, what sort of things would you like to see change in terms of road safety and not just driver awareness, but driver, education as well?
Yeah, definitely. I've been very fortunate in times thereafter. Basically, I was in a role within government that saw me do a lot of field work. As part of that saw me get a hell of a lot of driver training beyond and way beyond what anyone else would receive in their life. And there's serious golden nuggets in there that I just remember from each driver training that you just then take into your life and take it further. And I think one of the ones for me was doing a defensive driver training and knowing what ABS sounds like when you stomp on it really hard, and knowing that what to do when you do get onto the curb and in the loose gravel of the curb and that sort of thing. And then it has made me pause and reflect and go, all right, from one level, people can go and get driver training, but from another level is I look back at my driver training now, granted that was a long time ago, but if the hardest thing kids are still dealing with and the most stressful situation is how to reverse parallel park, then there's something fundamentally wrong with what we're teaching our kids today. It should be, the hardest part should be how do I control when I've lost it as I've dropped off on a gravel curve going along at 100 k's an hour. Granted, I think you should learn in a safe environment, and that might be the inhibitor to some of those situations. However, that's really where I see there can be a huge because working and where my role did touch a bit on health and safety, and so much is about training and the reason we do fire drills is so people can just go into automatic and go, oh cool, okay, I just leave everything behind and go down the steps and assemble at the assembly area. Well, if we've done really good defensive driver training, then when you get in those situations, you don't need to think. Your body just goes, yep, cool, that, done.
Or the other aspect of that is you can intercept it with higher order skills. You can intercept the problem before it becomes something major. And I would agree with you. I think we often talk about training as like getting a license is a little bit like just going to preschool and giving kids preschool level of education, but expecting them to perform at year 12 level with nothing in between. And it's not only is it unfair, but it's what's leading to a lot of these higher order incidents that we're seeing. I'm so grateful that both of you are here to tell your story. And thank you so much for all the work that you both do. It's helpful for everybody to get that message from so many perspectives. So thank you both, and thanks for being part of Rural Road Safety Month. Thank you. Blair, great to see you as always, mate. Why do you think it's important that education and also awareness are continually refocused in terms of improving rural road safety?
I think education's the starting point. Whether you're driving a car, you're playing in a sports team, education on what you need to be prepared for, what are the rules of the game, what are some of the scenarios that you need to be prepared for, enables anybody to then start making the decisions and thinking about the scenarios they may be faced. And on rural roads, on all the different scenarios we have in a country as diverse as Australia, that education is the absolute starting point for someone being prepared for being on our roads.
And like you and I were talking off air about this, sport is a great example of that. We're here at this magnificent stadium. Sports people are doing essentially the same thing so they can perform well on a field. And I guess it's the same that we're really asking all road users to do. And obviously part of that preparedness comes down to the vehicle that you're driving. So the safety philosophies that Subaru have obviously align perfectly with the foundation. But maybe tell us a little bit more about the sort of safety approach and the philosophy that Subaru have for their vehicles.
It's really broken into a couple of different areas. We talk about active safety technologies. Those are the ones that play a role in trying to prevent an accident and are helping you be more aware as a driver, take control of a couple of scenarios. One of my favourite features in our cars that I think is underutilised is adaptive cruise control. By setting your speed and it'll adjust for vehicles jumping in front of you, it allows you to not have to be so concerned about your speed. The car is monitoring that for you, so you are more aware for your surroundings, looking at what's coming in other directions, the driveway off to the left and the road up ahead. So it allows you, basically gives you time as a driver. So there's those types of safety technologies. Then we have preventative, emergency braking, those sorts of things where you do get into a scenario and it's there to, again, assist you to try and avoid having an accident. And then the last line of defence in terms of the inbuilt safety technologies for, in the worst case scenario of an accident, and how the car and its design and its structure protects the occupants to try and minimise, that energy transfer to the passengers. So different stages, and they all play a different role. And obviously the one that we're really passionate about, which comes back to road user responsibility, is trying to avoid those scenarios and using those technologies to allow you to be alert and aware on the road and have a safe, enjoyable trip and relaxed trip where you can be attuned to all the things happening around you.
And you're right. It's once things have started happening, it's up to the lap of the gods as to how bad that's going to be. So that prevention aspect is again really critical.
Yeah, really critical, and that's where the likes of Subaru Corporation, our manufacturers of the vehicles, are building so many technologies to try and avoid that worst case. Obviously, there's great technologies and structure to the car if that has to occur with airbags and those types of features in the car. But so many of the current technologies, like our eyesight system, are to try and prevent. And the same with the driver monitoring system, which, if you're glancing off to the side or you're distracted by the children, it'll beep at you and give you that awareness to, hey, you're not looking ahead. And in that split second, things can happen. So many things designed to support you as a driver, support you as the road user in being responsible. And they're there to assist you. They're there to make sure you're alert and focusing on what you're doing, which is getting you and your passengers to a safe destination.
And I guess, mate, just finally, obviously, we're extremely grateful on the foundations, from the foundations aspect, to have Subaru on board and your support that you and your whole team have really given us. Why do you think it is so important that we have consistent road safety education? What makes a community campaign successful, and something like Rural Road Safety Month? And I guess really, what's the driving force for Subaru to be behind the work that the foundation's doing?
I think the driving force for us is that we want motorists all around Australia to get to their destination safely and enjoy their vehicles, connect with families, get around this great country and do it in a responsible way. And technologies in the vehicles will play a part, but the responsibility we all have, and that's what we're really passionate about, is that the vehicles are one part, but we're all road users at the end of the day. So our role in making sure that us and our passengers are safe and everyone around us, that's why we're really passionate about supporting the messaging of the foundation and making sure as many Australians as possible hear this, and that we're all safe on the roads and we're looking after each other. And that's really the spirit of Australia and of Subaru in Australia, is being part of the community and supporting our people.
Well, mate, we're very grateful for the support. It's great working with you and your whole team, and the foundation is extremely proud to have Subaru on board. So, mate, thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank all of our special guests for being part of this presentation for Rural Road Safety Month. And remember, with the majority of Australians intending to take a regional road trip in the next 12 months, it's even more important that we focus on this issue. So respect the road, and to learn more, visit arsf.com.au to find out what you can do. Remember, the keys to road safety are in your hands.